Now, I want to take you to 2020. Did you have the occasion to investigate any specific incidents involving YFN incidents towards YSL members or YSL members towards YFN members?
I did.
Okay. In 2020, how many such incidents did you yourself were part of the investigation?
There were numerous incidents that we worked on as a team.
And in 2020, were there a lot of back and forth shootings between those two groups or associates of those two groups?
Yes, almost daily.
In 2020, were there also social media posts of antagonizing between one group, posting on social media, antagonizing the other group?
Yes.
Do you know of an individual by the name of Tinquarius Mender?
I do.
How do you know that individual? How are you aware of that individual?
I want to make sure I answer that. Is it okay to answer?
Let me ask you this. Is Mr. Mender associated with YSL?
He is.
Have you seen social media posts of Mr. Mender driving around in YFN territory?
Yes, he would post himself driving around, and he would tag, in case you didn't recognize it from sight, he would tag Summerhill.
And why would that be considered antagonizing for Mr. Mender to be driving around in Summerhill?
Because Mr. Member was also a member of YSL.
In 2020, did you have the occasion to investigate a case involving Mr. Mender and Mr. Deamonte Thomas at Greenbrier Mall?
Yes, but I think it was Dontavius Thomas.
Excuse me, Dontavius Thomas. Are you aware if Dontavius Thomas is related to Donovan Thomas?
Yes.
How are they related?
I believe it's his brother.
How were you involved in the investigation regarding Mr. Mender and Dontavius Thomas?
At that time, like I said, there was a conflict. The conflict had reignited. So almost daily, every day we had incidents happening. I remember that day we were at work, we got a call about a vehicle that was fired upon while it was driving on the highway, and it had flipped over, had 2 victims inside the vehicle. Myself and investigator Storno of the Atlanta Police Department's gang unit began to look deeper into that case and realized that the victims on the case were Dontavius Thomas and Reginald Carter, the brother and cousin of Donovan Thomas.
And you said you began to dig deeper. What else did you do as a part of that investigation?
Once we got into the investigation, we located a suspect vehicle that I knew to be associated with Mr. Mender and his cousin, Wayne Alford.
And what else did you do as a part of the investigation?
We would pull phone records, we got video, we spoke to witnesses, and ultimately were able to charge that case appropriately.
Were there other conflicts that occurred in 2020?
Yes, following that case, I mean, it was, like I said, it was daily. It was constant shootings back and forth between the Summerhill neighborhood of Atlanta and some of the other areas where the YSL associates would hang out. It resulted in murders. It resulted in aggravated assaults. There were numerous incidents.
Now, in 2021, did you learn of the arrest of Rayshawn Bennett?
I did.
Okay. And when he was arrested, where was he housed?
At the Fulton County Jail.
And while he was in the Fulton County Jail, did you learn of a stabbing of Mr. Lucci in February of 2022?
I did.
Right. How did you become aware of that incident?
I believe one of the investigators from the Fulton County Jail had mentioned it to me.
Okay. And once you learned about the incident, what, if anything, did you do?
Once I learned about the incident, I inquired about who the suspect was, and I found out that it was a Mr. Jaden Myrick.
When you found out it was Jaden Myrick, what did you do at that point?
I was familiar with Mr. Myrick, so I began to listen to his jail phone calls and look at his jail. In the jail, I don't know if they still do, they used to have tablets they could rent, and they could text friends and family members through the system with the tablets. So I began to review his text messages as well. And
you said you were familiar with Mr. Myrick. How were you familiar with him?
His involvements in the case that we had at the office.
Okay. And we say the office, talking about the Fulton
County District Attorney's Office.
And in your understanding of who Mr. Myrick was, did you know if he was associated with any gang?
I knew he was a blood gang member that was associated with YSL.
Now, you said that you started looking at their tablets. Were you able to get the contents of that tablet?
No.
The text messages of the tablet?
Well, when you log into the system, you can review their text messages. So I was able to review some of the text messages from that relevant time period.
And have you had the opportunity to review some of those text messages in preparation for your testimony today?
I have.
Once you started looking at these messages, what, if anything, did you learn or glean from these messages?
It appeared to me that Mr. Myrick's girlfriend, Ashley Ellison, was acting as a third party for communication with somebody else.
Okay. And once you started looking at determining Ms. Ellison might be serving as a third party, what did you do at that point?
I began to try and identify the third party and a phone number associated with that party.
And how did you go about doing that?
There were context clues from the text messages. On a text message from February 6th, she says, your folks, this message is from your folks, 706, which is an area code that I know. So I think, okay, maybe that's a clue. Maybe that's the person has a 706 area code. Okay.
And what did the text say?
It does. So Ms. Ellison is conveying the message from the 706 area code to Mr. Myrick. And she says, and the person is telling her to tell him, tell Lil Bro, I talked to the biggest, just now waiting on the news. He thinks we're flexing. I talked to the biggest. He thinks we're playing because the racial expletive in the same house and it ain't handled. I done put the food on the table. Make me proud. My name is on the line on this one, so don't make me look bad.
And what was the date and time of that message?
February 9th, 2020 at 11:32 p.m.
Is it 2020?
I'm sorry, 2022.
Okay. And in reading that, did you have an understanding of what they were even talking about?
A basic understanding, yes.
What was your understanding of it?
That they were waiting for confirmation that the act had happened, saying that we think we're flexing, he thinks we're trying to get one over on them. And they think that they were kidding because I guess they'd been housed together for a little while and nothing had happened up until that point. And he tells them he put the food on the table, like he gave him the opportunity and make me proud.
And once you saw that message, how did you go about determining if 706 was a phone number or what 706 was?
I reviewed Mr. Myrick's jail calls. You can pull jail calls by the inmate themselves. And I looked at his jail calls to see if there are any phone numbers that he had called with a 706 area code.
And were there any phone numbers he had called with a 706 area code?
Yes, there was one.
Now, once you saw the phone number that he had called, what, if anything, did you do about the phone number?
I requested the records for the phone number. I learned that it was a Verizon phone number. When you have Verizon, they retain what is called text message data. As long as it's not an iPhone, if you have an iPhone, as long as it's not iMessage and it's Android to Android or iPhone to Android, for 7 days they will retain the contents of those text messages. So I secured a search warrant and requested the call records as well as the text message content for that phone number from Verizon.
And were you able to get that information?
I was.
And once you received the information, what, if anything, did you do?
I tried to, it just comes in as a big spreadsheet. So I went through and sorted and identified the calls. The texts, and read through them.
And when you said you sorted, how did you go about sorting and identifying the text messages?
To make it comprehensible and able to be read, I color-coded the messages from each person so people could kind of track and follow along with what was being said.
And have you had an opportunity to review a copy of a demonstrative showing how you kind of color-coded those text messages to help determine what people were talking?
I have.
Showing you what's been marked as States Exhibit 1 TTB. Do you recognize States Exhibit 1 TTB?
I do.
And how do you recognize States Exhibit 1 TTB?
This is the color-coded version of the spreadsheet that I had made.
And I'm going to show you here States Exhibit 1 TTC1, 1 TTC2, 1 TTC3, and 1 TTC4. Do those appear to be enlarged versions of your color-coded copy of your text messages?
Yes.
Your Honor, this time the state would like to tender and admit first States Exhibit 1 TTB and 1 TTC 1 through 4. B as evidence and C 1 through 4 as demonstrative.
All right, those are admitted.
And permission to publish.
You may.
And permission for the witness to step down, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
So, first, orient the jurors as to the colors and who, when you have dark green, who are you highlighting, light green, the pink, and the red. So first, orient the jurors.
Okay. So the greens are going to be...
And talk loud so that everyone can hear you.
Okay. So the greens are going to be members of, or somebody associated would appear to be YSL. So to make it easy, I associated that stuff with green.
Why did you say that it appeared that they were associated with YSL?
Based on the context of the conversation, what was being discussed, how people were being referred to, things like that.
Okay.
The red is going to be a conversation with Ashley Ellison. That's Mr. Myrick's girlfriend. So the darker red, you see the originating member, it's going to be Mr. Myrick. And then the lighter, the pink, is going to be Ms. Ellison. And then the yellow was an unknown number that was inserted into the conversation. It was still at the bottom.
And when you went back and started investigating the case, what do you recall what day the stabbing occurred?
February 9th.
So when you went back, why did you start at February 6, 2022?
Because that's what the jail text messages, that's kind of when they had started. So I wanted to go back to get, usually when a crime happens, sometimes it's premeditated, sometimes it's not. But I wanted to catch the planning phase if there was any planning phase.
And did you ever associate any of the other phone numbers, for example, this 404-293-3244, did you ever at some point identify that phone number?
I did.
And who did you identify that phone number to belong to?
That belonged to Deamonte Garlington.
And did Deamonte Garlington have a nickname?
D, or Little D.
And were you ever familiar with his social media accounts?
I was.
And did he ever go by the social media account Scarface?
He did.
So let's start with, on February 6, 2022, is there a text message from the phone associated with Deamonte Garlington to that 706 number?
No, it's going to come from the 706 number to Mr. Arlington.
Okay. And thank you for clarifying that for me. The 706 number, let me ask you this. Did you ever identify that individual?
I did.
And who was that?
That's going to be a gentleman that goes by the name Khalif Adams. He's an inmate with the Georgia Department of Corrections. He also goes by the name Bobby Hunt. That's his nickname, his moniker he likes to go after.
And based on your investigation, was he conducting these text messages while he was incarcerated in prison?
He was.
All right. Now, looking at the first message, what is the date and time of the first message?
February 6, 2022 at 10:22 a.m.
10:20 or 19?
19:20, sorry.
Okay, so that's 7:20 p.m.?
Yes.
All right. And what is the text message?
It says, yo.
And is there a response from the phone associate, Mr. Garlington, to the phone associate, Mr. Adams or Bobby?
Yes, Mr. Garlington says, who is this? Or who's this?
All right. And is there a response?
He says, Hunt.
Okay. Now, you have a red call here. What does that signify?
That's going to be a text message from Ashley Ellison, Mr. Myrick's girlfriend.
And who is she communicating with?
She's sending a message to Mr. Hunt, the gentleman in prison.
And what did she say?
She said, hey, this is Red. Sectric Ruby, can you talk? He wanted me to call you.
Now, Sectric, do you know who that is?
Mr. Hunt, that's the nickname that he goes by, Sectric.
And have you ever heard the term, this is Red Sectric Ruby? Do you have heard of that term before?
Yeah, Ruby is a slang term or a name that's given to a female friend or associate of the blood gang. They go by a Ruby, like Cindy Ruby.
And at any point did Mr. Adams respond to her?
Yes, a little bit more down the line.
Okay. And just to make it easier, when did he respond to her and what was his response?
Want me to call you? It might have gone through the jail messages. It's hard to explain.
Okay. So then next, on February 6, 2022 at 1951, is there a conversation between Mr. Adams' phone and Mr. Garland's phone?
Yes.
Okay. And just go through that conversation, the next set of conversation.
So, Mr. Garlington says, what it do, twin? Mr. Adams, who's been in communication with Mr. Myrick, says, my little man, right there, with the F-U-C-K, racial expletive. And Mr. Garlington says, oh yeah, where about? Mr. Adams says, you know which I'm talking about, right? The singer. And Mr. Garlington says, who's locked up? And Mr. Adams says, 650. To which I know that to be a nickname for Mr. Bennett. He will wear a 650 chain. He goes by 650 Blue. He has music. He has a Maybach, 650 Maybach. That's where it comes from. So Mr. Garlington responds, oh yeah, need him. And then Mr. Adams says, my little man gonna call back tomorrow. Mr. Garlington says, okay, let me know. Mr. Adams, attempting to use coded language, says, I'm gonna let you know. He's been ready to get an autograph for the game. And then Mr. Garlington says, okay, let me know ASAP. To which Mr. Adams responds, red.
And when you said he's using coded language, what do you mean?
Instead of saying, my buddy's ready to kill him, ready to attack him, obviously his contraband phone gets...
Take it in.
Right.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to, if the calls were to get intercepted, when phones get taken, it's an attempt to conceal the activity to the person that receives it.
So they're not really trying to get an actual signature autograph for the guy?
No, I'm not trying to get an autograph.
Okay. Now, after that conversation, is there some conversation between Ms. Ellison's phone and Mr. Adams' phone?
Yes.
Okay. When does that conversation begin, and take the jury through that set of conversation?
It begins on the 7th, and they're talking about trying to put Mr. Myrick in communication with Mr. Adams down in the prison system. They're talking about emailing him, texting him. They're asking about stamps in the Fulton County jail system. You have to purchase stamps, the Fulton stamps, to be able to send and receive text messages. So you may buy 30 stamps that will allow you to send a certain amount. It's not free. So she's asking Mr. Adams for money for stamps from Mr. Myrick because they've used their last, and she's facilitating CashApp or Chime, Apple Pay to get the money to him to be able to facilitate stamps being purchased so they can communicate.
And is that communicating via phone?
It's going to be through the jail.
All right. And then there's a interesting call from a number that you're unaware of.
Correct.
And that was not a part of your investigation, investigating this kind of back and forth.
Yeah, it was just somebody trying to, a third party trying to send the money. Maybe somebody didn't want to use their CashApp, locked or whatever money happened, so somebody else trying to help out.
Okay. And then do they pick up that same conversation trying to get stamps for Mr. Myrick?
Yeah, the unknown number says I sent 15. I'm trying to get in contact with, or Mr. Connolly in the jail. They'll send one inmate may have a CashApp account that they're using in the jail, and everybody can send money to, and it might change if somebody's phone gets taken, if the CashApp account gets shut down. So Mr. Adams, in this text message, sends the $15 to somebody for section. And then he tells Ms. Allison, I sent the 15. And she says, I got it, I'm going to get the stamps now, and tell him to call me. Okay.
Now, going to February 8th, 2022, is there more conversation between Mr. Adams' phone and the Garlington phone?
There is.
Now showing you what's been admitted as 1TTC2. Is there a conversation between the phone associated with Mr. Garlington and the phone associated with Adams?
There is.
Okay. And what is said on February 8th, 2022?
On February 8th, 2022, there's a message that goes out from Mr. Adams to Mr. Garlington where he says, I talked to little bro, he's going to hit me when the food is done.
And does that mean when the food is actually cooked and finished or something else?
No.
Speculation.
Sustained.
Is this your understanding of coded language as well?
It is.
And is your understanding of coded language, does it appear to be coded language?
It does.
All right. Now, is there conversation then between Ms. Allison's phone number or Allison's phone number and Adams' phone number?
Yes.
Okay. Just tell us your generally the date and time and what's the general context of what's going back and forth between them two.
So it starts on February 8th, and you'll see Miss Elson saying, Cedric wanted me to tell you Chris got locked back up, and he made the news last night. And he says, I seen it when it happened, that shit's crazy.
Now, in your understanding, investigate, do you know what they're referencing?
I do.
And what is it?
They are referencing the incident where Christian Effinger shot Officer David Rogers, and he was arrested for that. I believe it was on February 7th, so that means that's it.
Okay. Go ahead.
And he says, see what happened. And Miss Ellison says, yesterday, and she's saying that Mr. Myron said, he said, ain't Shorty a rat. And Mr. Adams says, tell him leave that be him. And Mr. Adams says, focus on the bag. F all the other shit we worried about. It's nothing but business. Go ahead. Is this?
The president.
Good. No. Okay. Nothing but business. And they start talking about, he says, Buddy's up under Rico and them. Tell him to bring home the trophy. I'm going to secure the bag. I've been online. Racial expletive. Got to see it to believe it. And Chris being in there is all the confirmation that's going to be needed.
So is that also using some coded language as well?
Some.
And what is your understanding of what's happening in this text message?
Basically, tell him focus on the task at hand. And that people are going to get confirmation of it because Eppinger's in there. He's going to be able to vouch for it and say, no, it's happened. I'm here. It actually happened.
And then does that generally the context that's happening between Ms. Allison passing messages to Myrick from Adam in this February 8th conversation?
It is.
All right. Now going to February 9th, is there any messages between Mr. Adams and Mr. Garland?
He just reaches out to him. To me, it appears that maybe Mr. Garlington may have attempted to call him and he couldn't answer. And he says, yo, 12 is on the floor. 12 being a slang term for police. When you're in the prison system, the guards should come around, do rounds. If that's happening, he wouldn't have been able to answer his phone if the call came in.
And then are there conversations between Allison and Adam, you get on February, also now on February 9th, 2022?
Yes.
Okay. And tell the general what's the conversation happening here on February 9th, 2022?
Mr. Adams is engaged in a conversation with Miss Ellison, and he says, yo, and she says, what's up? And he says, tell Lil Bro, I talked to the biggest, just now waiting on the news. They think we're flexing. And she says, okay, I'll text this to him.
And go ahead.
And then Mr. Adams says, my name's on the line on this one. Don't make me look bad. Oh, that's a follow-up. So, yeah, my name's on this line. I'm sorry, the text messages, sometimes they come in a little bit out of order. My name is on the line. So on this one, don't make me look bad. He said, I talked to the biggest. He thinks we're playing because the racial expletive is in the same house and it ain't handled. I done put the food on the table. Make me proud.
Now, is this similar to the same text message that you saw in the JPay system when you were first just trying to pull the case? Is that same text message that was in the JPay system?
Yes.
And is that the same text message you read a few moments ago?
Yes.
All right. And is there any further conversation between Ellison and Adams and her passing that information on somebody?
It looks like there was based on the context, there was and there's a phone call that happens where there's a three-way call that's attempting to happen. Isn't great service in most of these prisons. So he wasn't able to hear him. So they're trying to get the message across about what had happened and the payment and things like that. And you'll even see he texted this yellow number. He says, nothing, just trying to get confirmation of this thing.
And is that confirmation, is your understanding that's a confirmation of the stabbing?
Correct.
And what day did the stabbing occur?
May 9th.
May 9th?
I'm sorry, February 9th.
Now, on February 10th, is there some conversation between Ellison's phone and Adam's phone?
There is.
Okay. If you can give the general context of what is now occurring on February 10th, and is this the day after the stabbing?
Yes.
All right. What is happening on the day after the stabbing?
Mr. Myrick, coupled with phone calls, Mr. Myrick is eager to be paid for what he did for stabbing Mr. Bennett. So Ms. Ellison is texting.
Yeah, I mean, I already instructed you once to not include your commentary and just provide the facts.
Can I lay some foundation? Were you able to listen to the jail calls yourself?
I was.
And were you able to pick up tone and manner and demeanor in the calls that you were listening to?
Yes.
And
All right. And so that would be your lay opinion that he, okay.
Yeah.
And based on that, is that how you were determining that he was eager to get paid for what he did to Mr. Bennett?
Correct. That was the purpose of his phone calls, were to seek payment for what he had done.
And were there multiple phone calls for him seeking payment for what he had done?
Yes.
Okay. And with that, Your Honor, may that be?
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, looking at February 10, 2022, just go through what that conversation was on February 10th, 2022.
She said, do you need the bros to verify? He said that's all. Should be no talking on the phone right now anyway.
And for you as an investigator, was that significant?
It was.
Why?
Because he was seeking payment and talking about, does it need to be verified to secure payment? And they were talking about not talking on the phone right now because of what had just happened.
It being the stabbing that just happened?
Correct.
All right. And when you say not talking on the phone, is that not talking on the jail phones?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Continue.
he's asking, Ms. Ellison said, Mr. Myrick is asking to get something to eat now. He's hungry. And then he again utilizes an outside person to send like $80 to Mr. Myrick.
And that's generally the conversation here, them just trying to get this money, get paid.
Correct.
All right. Now, skipping down to February 10th, is there now some conversation between Garlington and Adams?
Correct.
All right. Tell us about what's happening between Garlington and Adams on February 10th as well.
Mr. Adams is reaching out to Mr. Garlington regarding what appears to possibly be payment for Mr. Myrick for the stabbing.
And just go through the text.
Okay. Mr. Adams says, get at me, 3-5, and he says, Mr. Garlington says, okay, when I get off your phone. Mr. Adams says, I'm on your ass. You tried to play me to the left. Then one says, yo. The other says, yo. Mr. Adams says, what you got going? Mr. Garlington says, put him down. And he says, for sure. Like, did he put him down? And he says, are you for sure? So I'm yo, twin. And again, Mr. Adams reaches out and says, look, just keep me posted so I can make sure little bro gets something because he's on my top bad. And I told him I was going to get him the back end for his show. Got to pay him a couple racks myself to make sure he's in gang. I recognize when they say Jeezy typically means good. I ain't looking for nothing for me. I'm just invested in my artist. Smell me. I need me and mines. Looks like gone. Gonna get it done for sure. Slat, I'm out here. Hit me, gang. And then Mr. Garlington responds, it's hard to get in touch with him. I just be seeing him when I go up there. To the yo. You know I understand that shit, gang. I'm with you, Slat.
Miss Hylton, you don't have to do it right now, but be kind of thinking about when a good lunch break would be.
This is the last one, so I'll put it right here.
Sounds good.
All right. And while we wrap this up, so we go to lunch. So what is this still on the February 10th, 2022?
Yes, it's a continuation.
Okay. And just go through the last bit of that conversation between Mr. Garlington and Mr. Adams on February 10th.
Mr. Garlington says, okay. And Mr. Adams says, for sure. I know it's going to take time, bro. Bro is bigger than big, and he got to be hands-off with everything. We locked in from county to 4-4 ever. Slime, I'm rocking, and mine's going with me. It's all hands on deck.
And does that text message repeat itself?
It does.
All right. And from your investigation and understanding, when he says, for sure, I know it's going to take time, bro, bigger than big, and got to be hands off with everything. We locked in from county to forever slime. Who did you understand they were talking about, given your investigation and content of these text messages?
From my investigation and my knowledge, it sounded like somebody in a leadership role with YSL.
Okay. Did you know specifically who?
It appeared to be Mr. Williams.
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Sustained.
And a motion to strike, move to strike.
Can I lay some down?
You can try.
Okay. How long have you been working back and forth with the YSL gang?
Since 2019 at least, if not 2017.
Okay. And when you were working with these cases, did you ever have any other evidence in which individuals from YSL, from your own investigation, attempted to conceal Mr. Williams' identity?
Yes.
And how have you seen that occur?
With the use of FaceTime to conceal his identity, so text messages or phone calls go undetected.
Okay. Have you ever seen in your investigation or listening to jail calls that individual YSL would try not to use his name?
Correct.
Okay. Have you ever seen through social media where individuals will try to conceal and say, don't say his name, say a different name?
Correct.
Right. And in having that knowledge and reading this text message, is that how you determine, it is of your expert opinion, that this could be potentially talking about Mr. Williams?
Well, objection to leading, and it's also a misstatement of what was said initially. In her opinion, it's Mr. Williams.
All right.
Could be Mr. Williams.
I'm going to let you clear that up on cross.
I originally
answer.
said somebody with a leadership role. I can't definitively say Mr. Williams. I said somebody within a leadership role, so that's who is in the highest leadership role. So.
No, I think this would be a good time.
Okay. Let's take our lunch break and let's plan to be back at 1:15, please.